Hello and welcome back to The Marketing Hustle. If it's your first time here, I'm your host, Lottie Unwin. I say that every time, but there are still some first-time listeners. We're deep in our series focused on what marketing directors and CMOs really think. Today, I've got an incredibly seasoned marketing leader, Gaston Tourn, round. Gaston has been the Chief Growth Officer at Oddbox for 7 months. I don't think Oddbox needs any introduction, but they've made wonky fruit famous. In this episode, he's going to teach you the basics of succeeding in a job. He'll talk about the importance of doing your due diligence before you accept an offer and how he goes about doing that in real detail. And what I found so powerful is his focus on remembering that every role is just about adding clear value to a business. Gaston's passion for saving wonky fruit and fixing the big problems in food was so inspiring. I've honestly left this conversation passionate about getting rid of all plastic from my kitchen. While I was making Gaston a tea, he did ask me what I actually did, so I will tell you before we kick off. I run 3 businesses. I don't run a podcast full time, although I wish I did. And if I get loads more listeners, who knows? Upworld is a community for people in marketing. So if you're looking for training or community and networking, that is the place to get involved. UpTalent is a recruitment business. So if you're hiring marketers or you're looking for a new role, that's the one for you. And finally, Brand Hackers runs fractional marketing teams for brands with big dreams. If you're thinking about resourcing your marketing a bit differently, do DM me and let me know what you think of this conversation.
So, as we were chatting, this is like part of our new series with not founders, like marketing people. And one of the things that keeps coming up is like just job titles. So this morning I spoke to a head of brand. Today I'm speaking to a chief growth officer.
Yes.
Tell me what that like is. What do you do?
I mean, I never managed to explain my grandparents what I do since I literally went to university. Now I'm not even able to explain to my parents, maybe not even to my siblings. So it gets more complicated over time. But I think in general, what I do is really inspire people to join the mission of my business. If I have to say what marketing is all about, is really to influence or inspire someone to do something. In my case, I am the Chief Growth Officer at Oddbox. Oddbox, we are really a movement to rescue fruit and veg that otherwise would be at risk of going to waste. 40% of fruit and veg in the world is wasted just because it doesn't have the right shape for the supermarket. It's either too big, too small, slightly wonky.
Wow. Like these absolutely enormous pears.
Yes, which are huge. Look at this.
I know. Like whoever said their pear was too big. Like,
yes.
That's amazing.
And this one especially, I know this grower, like for these gigantic pears, and it's like the most delicious pears ever.
Great.
So you have to try them. But yes, I feel like it's literally because mostly of cosmetic specifications from supermarkets, 40% is wasted. When you look at like the contribution that food waste has to greenhouse emissions, it's around between 10% to 16%, depending of course on like how you account for that carbon emissions.
Talking to what you're reading.
Yes, but it's a big percentage.
It's very compelling.
It's a very big percentage. So it's really the easiest way to tackle a huge issues like climate change. When you think about climate change, how big it is, of course, we're all going to be affected by it. Like it or not, you're going to be affected by climate change.
Yep.
This is a very small step that you can take. It's rescuing fruit and veg from going to waste and making sure that you're not wasting that food. So my job is really inspiring more people to join that mission. So I obsess about how I can use different communication channels, language, to really get people inspired by it.
Okay.
That has a fancy job title of Chief Growth Officer, but I think like before I was called Chief Marketing Officer in previous roles for different types of businesses. In some businesses now they call it Chief Customer Officer. Yeah. I just think in the end, it's really about influence and how you can inspire someone to join that business and particularly to join the mission of that business.
Okay. So you don't see your job as different to a Chief Marketing Officer role?
I don't. And I know it's a quite interesting, controversial discussion now in the marketing sphere because chief growth officers are becoming more trendy.
Yeah.
And I think actually CMO, it's a better job title. I think it's actually probably much closer to what's the remit that a CMO has or a chief growth officer has in a business.
Yeah.
some people would say, well, but the CMO doesn't really look into pricing and product, and that's why we need to call it Chief Growth Officer. And I feel
like a terrible CMO then.
Yeah, that's an absolute bullshit reason, because if you're a CMO, you know that the 4 P's of marketing include price, include product.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily see why you would change the name. And also think Chief Growth Officer is slightly confusing as a name, because in the end, in any business, everyone should be driving growth.
It makes it sound like someone else is like, oh, I don't do growth.
I don't do growth.
I just sit here keeping things the same.
Yes. Or like even Chief Customer Officer, like what a terrible name. It's like, oh, someone owns the customer. Like, look, we are all paid here a salary because of customers.
Because of customers.
So we all own the customer. And I feel like it's a very bad name in terms of like putting the responsibility from the whole business into just one job title.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to have huge responsibilities, but I feel like what I'm not happy with is just making other teams feel like, they don't own the customer, or that they are not supposed to drive growth. I feel like everyone in the business should be doing that.
Well, it's like it becomes an oxymoron, because your whole, presumably, a big part of your job is to create a company-wide culture around growth and to organise everyone behind growth goals.
Yes.
So to have it in your job title only kind of negates that.
Yes.
But I suppose it's the same if you have like a head of sales, when it's like, well, everyone here is trying to sell things.
Yes, I agree. I feel like in the end, to be honest, when you're part of a leadership team, your job title doesn't really matter. Like every day I'm doing whatever the business requires. But my functional expertise, and really the function that reports to me, is the marketing function.
Okay.
But I do work very closely across the business to do whatever is required in order to unlock more growth, which in the end means more rescued fruit and vegetables. Amazing. That's our obsession. And now we're even moving further, like not just fruit and veg, just thinking in general waste and how we can be more resourceful with our food. So I think it's going to go beyond that. But like in general, it's all around how I can inspire more people to join that mission.
Okay. So you've been in your role for 7 months.
Yes,
Is that right?
New.
Okay.
Yes, very new.
So that, to me, that's a really interesting amount of time. Because my experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, is that the first 3 months, you're just listening and a bit like, what the fuck's going on?
Yes.
The first 90 days, you observe, you try and add a bit of value, but you're also really aware that you've got to suck it all up. It's not the time to make decisions. And then I always find that you get to 6 months and you just feel like suddenly everything becomes clear. There's this moment of like, oh, I actually get this. Like I thought I was onboarded, I did my onboarding, but I didn't really live and breathe it. And now things start to feel different. Have you had like a recent moment of awakening?
Yes. I think especially in any leadership team, you need to figure out what's your role.
Yes. And then that's so different to job title, right?
Exactly.
By role, you mean something very subtle.
Yes. It's never going to be the job description that, they promise you before you join. Yeah. And I feel like that's completely fine. It doesn't mean that, it's a red flag. It's actually, there's one thing written on the page. There's another thing what actually is like how you can drive value to the business. When I join a business, what I obsess about is how can I drive value to this business? And that might mean different things based on the leadership team, because in some companies, for example, there might not be chief product officer. And then actually you will have to really take much more leadership when it comes to product strategy. Yeah. Compared to other businesses, when I joined, there was already a chief product officer. So I could be like, well, let me influence that. But actually what really needs focus is, acquisition or brand strategy. Or my previous business before Oddbox, there was no one really leading on our fundraising narrative. So what's the story we're telling when it comes to fundraising? The founders were incredible at working a lot of that stuff, but they definitely needed help when it comes to shaping the narrative. And I took the lead on that one. Is that traditionally what a CMO does? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's a chief strategy officer. Maybe it's like, who cares?
Yeah, other people could muck in to get that done. But the point is someone has to, and it's who's the right person for the job.
Exactly. And I think 6 months in the role, you definitely should know what's the value you're bringing to the company. In my case, it took maybe slightly longer compared to other businesses because I joined and then 2 months later joined the chief operations officer. And then 4 or 5 months after that, joined the finance director. So we're quite new as a leadership team.
Yeah.
And that means that you need to start figuring out how you can add value. And then there is someone new joining, and then you have to rethink about it. And I think now we are quite well established as a leadership team. Quite well established, maybe it's too optimistic. We're established. We're coming along as a leadership team. And I think I started to figure out how I can add value. But in the end, I think that will be my recommendation for any C-level. Don't obsess about your job title. It's more about how you can add value with your skill set.
Yeah.
And then filling gaps that every business will have, no matter what business it is, no matter how big it is, there's going to be gaps. And that's why you're employed by that business. Yes.
So what are the big areas that you're going to be working on?
So we are rethinking what's our product strategy in general with Oddbox. So far, probably lots of people know us for fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
So exactly the ones that we have here.
Yeah.
And we want to serve a bigger need beyond fruit and vegetables. What we know is that food waste is not just fruit and veg. There is food waste across the whole value chain.
Yeah.
And particularly when it comes to meals, what we see is that there's a lot of excess of, for example, plastic. We know that lots of people struggle with the amount of plastic that they have to use because supermarkets only offer plastic. But then also when you go to meal kits like Deliveroo or, not Deliveroo, sorry, HelloFresh or you go to meal kits like Gusto, it's so much plastic. And the same with like delivery services as Deliveroo. Yeah. All of that has so much food waste that I think we want to help people cook in a different way. Cook way more connected with nature. So connected with the seasons, because I think in general, what fruit and vegetables do is connect you back to the seasons. But we can go beyond connecting you back to the seasons and really focus on reducing waste when it comes to plastic, for example, offering you refillable items. So we started already offering things like pulses or pasta, just purely using refillable packaging and no plastic. But we want to go beyond that to just offer full meals in a very waste-free kind of approach.
Wow.
So we're going to be focusing on that.
This is big.
It's a big change to our product, to our brand as well.
Yeah.
So we want to go beyond fruit and veg to something much bigger.
And how soon is this going to happen?
So we started the first step literally a month ago.
Yeah.
We launched a market that is called the Market by Oddbox. And in the market, you can buy refillable items.
Okay.
So you can already buy pulses, you can already buy pasta. All of that comes from usually organic and very, very environmental first. So we only work with growers or producers that tend to be B Corps or have sustainability as part of the whole production process. But then in itself, the packaging as well is plastic free. So all items are plastic free. So we already launched that. We have lots of different ingredients that can help you cook beyond your fruit and veg. But now we're thinking about how we can also repackage the whole product to make it meal first. So we're going to have, for example, recipes that start with aubergines and give you all the ingredients to cook at home with those aubergines.
This is huge.
Yes, it's a huge change for Oddbox, but incredibly excited because in the end, we're all about eating good, doing good, while staying odd. That's how we describe the business. And I think it's going to help us to eat better while doing better. That's the two values that we will never compromise. The quality of the food and at the same time, the impact it has on the planet and people.
So we talked briefly while we were gossiping over tea about how impressed you've been by your founders and how this is actually a business where decisions are made for the right reasons, not just for profit. Was this a commercial strategy or is this a strategy that's driven by what the planet needs?
It was always driven by three P's, like planet, people, and profit. And as a B Corp, we always care about really the impact that we have. So it's not just purely commercial. It's really about how we can actually help people to have a positive impact when it comes to eating. And we know two things. We know that lots of people struggle with our fruit and veg box because they don't know how to cook vegetables, which is so interesting, but we're so disconnected.
You and me being like, anyone know how to cook rhubarb?
Yes.
Asking for a friend.
Yes. I'm going to try to cook that rhubarb at home.
Audience, we're stuck.
We don't know what to do with it. But actually, personally, I learned how to cook a lot of vegetables thanks to Oddbox.
Yeah.
I learned what to do with like aubergines that is just beyond roasting aubergines. Because that's the basic, right? Like we all know how to roast vegetables, but there's so much more that we can do.
Yeah.
And I think we know from our customers that they want to really get inspired to cook. And they don't know sometimes what to do with some raw vegetables. So we can help them. We can help them by providing them more ingredients. And helping them means also more people are going to join the mission because more people are going to be, well, this is something that actually like works for me. Because if I get vegetables that I don't know what to do, in the end, you don't know how to cook them. And in the end, you're wasting food. So in the end, it's really supporting that mission of rescuing fruit and vegetables and being always resourceful. That's from like the core box perspective of what we do. But also, I think it's really about bringing our mission to new categories of food that are as big or even bigger than fruit and veg. So for example, when it comes to pasta and pulses, it's a massive category. There's a lot of plastic packaging and there's a lot of also just really like not environmentally friendly practices in that industry, whereas we can make an impact by working with growers and working with really amazing brands that are having a positive impact on the planet, but in itself by using only paper packaging, no plastic packaging, we're already helping reduce also plastic waste, which is massive. So that's really how we decided to go into it. It was always a decision about what's the impact we can have. And of course, also from a profit commercial perspective, it also makes sense.
Yeah, because you've got, I'm not disputing how important that is to the business. Anything I say now makes it sound like I'm being like, yeah, but you don't really care about that. And I know you do. But there's also real consumer insight in what you're saying, right?
Yes, completely.
You've got this sustainably focused customer who's also really foodie.
Yes.
And that makes total sense to me. And they are not satisfied by the meal kit world, I would assume. And so there is a commercial opportunity. You can take all of the planet stuff to one side and there's still a really clear business case.
Yes, because I think a lot of people struggle with the amount of waste that meal kits have. Like when it comes to like some of the biggest providers, all of them have like these very small plastic sachets with like literally...
there's like tiny little baggies,
tiny bags, and it's like so much waste that in the end, it's just not really what you sign up for. You wanted to cook more purposefully, like better kind of like cooking, and in the end you end up with like, 5 grams of soy sauce in a plastic bag, and it's just like not good for the planet. It's also, I think, almost dictating as well what you need to cook, which feels a bit like top down. It's almost like this is the recipe, use these 5 grams, where like in our case we're going to be providing full portions, like never small portions, and we're really figuring out the logistics of all of that, but we want to make sure that it's never wasteful. And a lot of these decisions are going to be made based on impact, not necessarily just based on like what's profitable. But I think in the end both should marry up. Like if you're making sense commercially, it means that you are delivering value to a customer, and delivering value to a customer should have a positive impact. I think like that's why I don't think about them almost as opposites.
No.
I always think that, if it has a good impact from a commercial perspective, in our business, not in every business, but in our business, it means having more positive impact on the customer and on the planet.
It's also very important that you build a sustainable business.
Yes.
This to do what you're trying to do, this has to work at scale for a long time.
Yes.
And so anything that's not commercially sensible is going to be shooting yourself in the foot.
Yes. And also anything that breaches the trust with our customers is going to kill the business. And thankfully, I thank our customers for like really holding high standards.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the type of customer we want to have in our community.
Yeah.
Like we want to have people who really care about our mission of food waste.
Yeah.
We launched, a couple of weeks ago, we launched our Do Good report, which is our impact report.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like when we launch those impact reports, I have seen it like in other B Corps, who actually reads them? Like, it's just literally 25 pages in a PDF. And I'm like, God, like, nobody's going to really read this. We got so many emails like, from people saying, like, I read it from start to end. Fascinating. On page 14, you mentioned this, but actually, I want to know more about X.
Gosh.
And I'm so thankful for all that. I think like all that questioning from customers, like really makes us wonder how we can be better as a business. So yes, I think like in the end, it's all around trust, as we know. I think like if I have to say what marketing is, what business is, it's around trust. Any human relationship is around trust. So we will never compromise that trust with our customers. And we will always make sure that our mission is really at the front and center of every business decision we make. And we have had to make lots of decisions that perhaps were not the right ones from a short-term commercial perspective. But in the end, as you said, they make a lot of sense to build a sustainable business in the long term.
Can we get into some examples? Has there been a really spicy time in your 7 months?
Yes, particularly I think like with this market that we launched, we could have worked with brands. I'm not going to name and shame any, but we could have worked with brands that from a commercial perspective and a margins especially point of view, we could have made way more money. But we were not 100% sure of their ethical credentials. Although they said a lot of things, we were like not 100% sure that ethically it makes sense.
Okay.
And we decided not to work with those brands. And we are working with other brands that were not making as much money as with, the original ones.
Yeah.
But I thought it was the right decision.
Because you know those customer emails are coming.
Yeah, and also I know that it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
Like if I cannot say 100% the brands that we're curating here are ethical, I don't feel comfortable saying it. And I think as a marketeer, I learned that many times. Like I have to feel comfortable about what I'm saying in order to be able to stand up for my business. And I think like it's also a bad decision as we discussed commercially. Because yes, in the short term, numbers might look good, but at some point that's going to explode.
Yeah.
And it's just not the right thing to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about customer acquisition. So you're a chief growth officer, and I thought you were going to come and say, I'm all about new customers. My job is to grow the customer base. And actually, you've talked really eloquently about how much impact gets you out of bed every morning. Is a big part of your job finding more and more people to try Oddbox?
Yes, it is. Of course, customer acquisition is big. I also think that reactivation is really important. And I actually have a potential reactivated customer
Right
here,
upstairs.
Right upstairs.
Who's fed up with your potatoes?
Yes.
And reactivation, is that because of the maturity of Oddbox in the market?
Yes, completely. So when I joined Oddbox, I define a lot of my KPIs because, of course, as a chief growth officer, you join, the business is measuring some stuff, and then you're like, this doesn't make sense. I think like we should actually be measuring this other metric. So I have an amazing life cycle kind of lead in my team, and she was not necessarily focused maybe on reactivations. They were definitely doing a lot of stuff on that front, but it was not a core metric for that team. And I decided to really focus on reactivating customers.
Because of a dynamic you'd seen in the data, or what made that such an important priority?
Because we launched a new product feature at that point, and I felt like this is a really good moment to go back to customers who churn and tell them about this. The product feature that we launched, it's called Pick Your Own. And actually, it's interesting because your partner churned because of that. So he said, like, I'm tired of potatoes. I don't want to have any more potatoes.
This is a customer insight interview we just did in my kitchen with my partner, who was complaining that once upon a time he got too many potatoes in an Oddbox, and that's why the business lost him.
Yes. And actually, it was a very common concern.
Yeah.
So we saw it, of course, in lots of interviews, lots of market research. And the business decided to launch this new feature before I joined. But it was actually launching as I joined. That is called Pick Your Own. And basically what it allows you to do is swap anything in the box. So if you don't like potatoes, you can change them for pears. Like if you want to have double portions of pears, just get double. You can swap everything in your box. And we have quite a good kind of options, I think, range of choice, like for you to choose really what you want. And actually we launched it with an amazing campaign that was called Veg Haters campaign. So it was all about like telling to like our community. So we invited people from our community to tell which vegetable they hated the most. And some of them, they even wrote like, I mean, one was amazing. It was like really how much she hated celery and like how celery reminded her of like sadness. And then there was like someone who even wrote a poem about mushrooms and how disgusting like mushrooms are. So it was all about hating vegetables. And then we try to convert them. So we try to do, for example, like hypnosis videos. So if you didn't like mushrooms, we did a hypnosis video to try to make you like mushrooms. But of course, none of them work. And then the message was like, if none of these work, don't worry, you can swap everything in your Oddbox.
So good.
So that campaign, it was our reactivation campaign.
Yeah.
And we managed to get lots of people back to Oddbox because lots of people, like your partner said, I was tired of this vegetable. There was no way for me to like swap stuff. Now I can do it. Now I'm happy to be back with you. So we have been doing lots of reactivations or reactivated customers, which is funny because a couple of weeks ago, I went to Paris to meet like the French Oddbox. We have no connections. But it's a very similar business model, but in France. And the French team there was telling me as well that they're focused on it, but they call it the resurrected customers. And I love the name because it's coming back from death, basically. Yeah. And we have been focused a lot on resurrecting as well customers, as much as acquiring new customers. And of course, it has a lot to do with the maturity of my business. If you're just starting as, a very early stage startup, you're not going to be doing a lot on reactivating customers because probably you don't have many. But in our case, I think there was a big opportunity in there. Also from a profitability, cost efficiency perspective, when it comes to reactivating customers, you use channels that are non-paid. You use email. Yes, you use email. Even SMS that, sometimes my life cycle team says like, FYI, we're doing an SMS campaign. This is costly. I'm like, what? Like compared to Meta, like this is nothing. Just do whatever you want. Like, send 10 million SMS. Like it's just like so cheap compared to like pay media. So huge opportunity as well when it comes to reactivations. I would say if you are already Series B, Series C, most likely there is a chance for you to think about how you can bring customers back, not just acquire new customers.
Yeah, because you move through your earlier, of course the Oddbox market is huge, but you move through your early adopters and anyone who, not anyone, but those who are sustainably minded might have given Oddbox a go. And so it must be that your customer acquisition moves to customers who are arguably more expensive and a little harder to win over. So those that have already tried you once before become easier.
Yes. And also think you're able to tell them exactly why they left and how the new service is going to address that pain point.
You know a lot about them.
Yes. It's not like shooting in the dark, which sometimes new customer acquisition, of course, you have a lot of insights and you always think about like your messaging based on customer insights, but it feels a bit more like shooting in the dark. Whereas with reactivated customers, you have lots of customer data that you can use to also segment your campaigns. The last campaign we did for reactivations, we did it segmented based on the cancellation reason. So we knew exactly why they cancel. And then we told them, we hear you, and this is how we improved.
Yeah, great. You talk about insight as though it's like living and breathing in every conversation. Is that actually true? How do you keep it? How do you embed it into the marketing team and how do you keep it so alive?
Yes, for me, customer insights is the reason for every single piece of communication, every single campaign that we do as a marketing team. It's not something that was perhaps fully embedded in our marketing team, but I think there's lots of stuff that you can do on a routine basis to make sure that is part of the marketing team. Two things that I did, just very tactical, but they help quite a lot, is establish 2 Slack channels with all Trustpilot reviews and lots of kind of like snippets from conversations that the customer happiness team has in our company. So very tactical, but it helps quite a lot because all the time we have customer feedback. Even like the Do Good report that I mentioned that we launched, how I know that lots of people were writing back to us is because there was a Slack channel with all the responses. So incredibly helpful to have Slack channels or weekly reviews of customer feedback. You don't need necessarily to do new interviews. It's just basically snippets from the customer happiness team, Trustpilot reviews. Of course, interviewing new customers is always helpful as well. But I would say there's a lot already out there that you should use. So that's one particular kind of like tactical recommendation.
Brilliant.
The second thing I do is every week I try to meet with an Oddbox customer in person. So I usually tend to message them. Some people, when they comment, for example, on an Instagram post or an Instagram ad, I send them a direct message and I'm like, so sorry to message you. I just saw your comment on an Oddbox post. I am the Chief Growth Officer at Oddbox. I just want to learn more about what you like, what you dislike about the service. And I tend to meet them for coffee. If they're in London, in person. If not, I meet them virtually. And I learn a lot from those conversations. Wow. I learn literally so much about new channels that we could explore, what's resonating, what's not resonating. Sometimes also we obsess about really existential questions, and then customers have like such simple responses to those questions. Like we were obsessed about, for example, value for money, how we can communicate value for money of our box. And then a customer just told me, like, it's simple. When I get like Jerusalem and artichokes, I think this is great value for money. When I get like a pineapple, I think like this box was amazing value for money. And it's so simple and it's so obvious, but we were never discussing really the composition of the box, how important it is to communicate that value for money to a customer. And it all came from conversations with customers.
So the application would be you have to have like one star item.
Yes, exactly.
And that changes your perception.
Yes, exactly. So of course that was like the takeaway, and it's now part of the strategy. But I feel like it all came from conversations with customers. So highly recommend, no matter the stage you are at as a business, just have conversations with your customers all the time. Those conversations are going to give you so many insights, things that you're ignoring, things that you have never considered, but they become so obvious when you speak to customers.
Yeah. Do your team do that too?
I encourage them to do it. And I'm planning to do sessions as well with customers involving people from my team. I haven't done them yet, but I'm planning to do it more.
I think there's often a tension. This came up in an early episode with Vince from Beautiful Dairy, the CMO there. I think sometimes as leaders, we're guilty of doing some things really well that we don't expect our teams to do. And then the alternative, where we expect our teams to be really good at stuff that we're useless at. So personal development for me is the second example. So I think we're always like, where's your personal development plan? How are you thinking about your growth? What courses do you want to do? And then if anyone ever said to the CMO, what are you doing? They're like, I don't have time for that anymore. Yeah, no clue. I haven't thought about that. And sometimes insight works the other way around, where the leaders, perhaps because we have a bit more, skin in the game, like we go that extra mile. So Vince was saying that he spends his weekends at the playground with his kids talking about gut health. And he knows his team don't do that because he doesn't expect his team to care on a Saturday morning about gut health. He expects them to be like hungover or doing something else. But I think that's interesting. So is this like a future project to codify and like really encourage within the organization how you do that?
Yes, and I definitely actually embed insight thinking as part of like everyone's development plans in my team.
Okay.
So there's always one objective that is around leading with insights in any campaign. And also when it comes to these channels, like the Slack channels, I have included everyone, and I constantly refer back to stuff from those channels, and you can see how now organically everyone reviews them.
Like creating behavior.
Yes.
As opposed to doing stuff on your own.
Yeah. But I feel like definitely I want to organize sessions that are across the whole team. Sometimes it's hard from a logistics perspective because, of course, as a customer, it's quite intimidating to have like 5 people, from Oddbox speaking to you. So it's much easier to do it one-on-one.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I'm not the only one doing it. And I'm sure like my team would love it and enjoy it as much as I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's such a red flag. they don't love it, it's such a red flag.
Yes.
Like, you can be a marketer who's not been exposed to it or encouraged, but to not think that it's the most fascinating thing in the world to hear what someone actually thinks about your brand, it's just such a missed opportunity.
I think like for anyone, like not just the marketing team, like if you're working for a business and you don't care about what your customers have to say about your business, definitely I would question like, what are you doing in that business? Because in the end, that customer is literally paying your salary.
What we said at the start, everyone has to grow the business because that's the only way it keeps going.
Yes. And I think it's just so refreshing to know the impact that your work has. I mean, I had it with the Do Good report that, we obsess about it. And I literally thought almost like, that feeling when you're organizing like your birthday party when you're a child, you're like, oh my God, nobody's going to come. Like, nobody's going to care. Like, and then we launched it, I was like, God, like, it's just going to be a disaster. Like, nobody's going to really care about it. And actually it was the opposite. Like, we received so much positive feedback from customers.
Yeah.
And it's just so rewarding to know that, actually something that you're doing, a customer really values it. Yeah. And then they even went the extra mile to tell you, to reply to an email and say, this really was a fascinating read. That's just like magic. I think like that's the magic of doing marketing. When you actually deliver something, a message, and on the other side, someone receive it and felt more inspired to contribute back to your brand.
This is your second Chief Growth Officer gig. Is that right?
It's my first one, actually. I had CMO roles before.
Oh, I see.
It's my first Chief
Different
Growth
titles.
Officer. Yes.
Okay.
So I had been CMO before. I was CMO at the Do Group, which is now called Bumble Group. It's a group of dating apps. They currently have 2 dating apps, Bumble and Badoo.
Pretty big apps.
Yeah, before it was 4 apps when I was there. It was Badoo, Bumble, Chappy, Lumen.
Wow.
That was my first CMO role. Also CMO at Emma, which is a D2C sleep company.
Yes.
So they...
I didn't scroll down your LinkedIn far enough. You've been busy.
Yeah, that was a role in Germany as well. So I moved from London to Germany for like some time. And then I came back and I was CMO at Appear Here, amazing marketplace business, B2B.
Yeah.
And then I was CMO at Curio for 2 years before Oddbox. So Curio AI for news, originally was audio journalism, so fascinating more that business. So yeah, I have had different CMO roles. This is my first Chief Growth Officer role. It's slightly different to a CMO, but because every single CMO role I had was also slightly different.
They're all different. Yeah. What have you learned personally in the last 7 months? What's your development plan been?
I have learned a lot about fruit and vegetables, which is fascinating. Like, I really got like into every single one of our products. I feel like as a CMO, the first thing I do is like I really go very deep into the product.
Okay.
Like I definitely become or try to become an expert in that product, because I think it's really important when you communicate, particularly like I think as a marketeer, you're communicating a product or service to someone else. You need to know what you're talking about. And in my case, fruit and vegetables is something that, of course, I always consume, but now I learned a lot about it. And I think I can definitely talk loads about like aubergines and, peppers and tomatoes.
We'll have to do a whole episode just on aubergine and test this.
Aubergines are amazing. They're so good for you as well, health-wise. But yeah, I learned a lot about the product, which is actually fascinating because we eat fruit and vegetables all the time and they're so good for you. We talk a lot about medicine and wellness. Like nature produces these incredible medicines and they are so tasty, so tasty. It's so tasty to eat like so many vegetables and fruits. And I think we're not sometimes making use of it. So I learned a lot about the product. And then I learned a lot about as well how broken our food system is. I think how disconnected we are from our food. I think like that's why I joined Oddbox, because I think like it's really food waste is just a symptom of a really broken food system. The fact that we don't care about food and we waste it is just a symptom of how broken it is. In other societies, in other cultures, throwing food, it's almost a crime because food is considered something precious. The fact that we see food as something that can be disposable, wasted, for me says a lot about how we are disconnected from food.
Yeah.
And I learn a lot how to reconnect back to food. Every week I receive an Oddbox, and I just learn a lot about the stories behind, some of those ingredients. I learn a lot about, for example, it was an amazing box letter, we call them. Like in every single box, we send a box letter where we tell stories around the growers and the vegetables that we
Is that
send.
the same? I remember years ago getting a beautiful long form
Yes.
text. That hasn't changed?
That hasn't changed. It's
That's
still there.
such a stunning piece of comms.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's also really beautifully written by Pete, who is one of our copywriters in the team. And he actually goes to some of our growers and learns a lot from them, and then tries to communicate it back in the letter.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that was amazing. It was around baby leaks. And he used a really beautiful line that was around basically not wasting baby leaks. And it was something like, never put baby leek on the corner. And it was beautiful. But I learned a lot about, for example, leeks and how baby leeks are harvested in the UK. And try to reconnect back to them. When you're cooking, it's not just a baby leek. It's not just a tomato. Someone grew it. And the fact that it's not wasted, and the fact that, you can actually enjoy it, is a really beautiful way of reconnecting with nature. So for me, it has been really that journey this last 7 months.
What about for you professionally? Like, has this been easy? Has it been sticky? How have you been getting on?
It's been really, really nice professionally. I think a lot of like any CMO or CGO role, actually any role in a startup, has a lot to do with your relationship with the founder of the business. I started my career in corporate. Like, I think like you also started in corporate.
Yeah.
You started in Unilever, right?
I was P&G.
P&G, yes. Well, in my case, I started at Google.
Okay.
And when I started at Google, the founders were still involved in the business.
Yeah.
I think we were probably, I can't remember, about maybe a quarter of the size of what Google is at the moment. So it was still I would say, almost it felt like a startup when I joined Google. It was very fast-paced. Didn't have lots of like the corporate stuff that it has now. And I remember going to all hands. We had all hands where like Larry Page and Sergey were like chatting, and then you could like have a beer with like Larry and Sergey. But definitely I think in those big corporates, as they grow, you lose touch of who is actually the founder, and also the mission becomes a bit more loose in a way. It's almost like, what in the end all of this is doing, I have no idea. But I think in startups, founders tend to have a massive impact on the culture.
Huge.
And they have a massive impact as well in terms of like where the business goes. Because there's a reason why a founder founded that business and not something else. So I have really enjoyed working with Oddbox founder. Oddbox had 2 founders. It's Emily and Deepak.
Yeah.
Deepak is currently more on the board. He's not like on the day-to-day business, where Emily is the CEO.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the integrity and the ethics of Oddbox come from her. Like it really comes from, and I'm sure as well from Deepak, but I think I haven't worked as closely with Deepak because he's not involved. He's not involved in the business on the day-to-day anymore. But it's so important, I think, when you join a business, really think about who is the founder, what do they care about, what are their values, because a lot of what you're going to see in your day-to-day is going to be their values, what they decided to do with that business, why they decided to found that business and not something else. So for me, it has always been super important to create that connection with the founder. And I think definitely with Oddbox, it has been amazing because I really care about the mission of the business, but knowing that there is someone leading it with ethics and integrity, it's critical.
Is that good luck, or were you very intentional in your job hunt when you were looking for a founder? Like, did you know going into this you'd found a good one?
Yes, I mean, I do a lot of due diligence before accepting any role, especially I think in a leadership role. you learn it the hard way. I feel like you learn it by making mistakes. So I think we all make mistakes.
Okay. Got some more stories.
Yes. And from those mistakes, you just learn how important it is to really choose a founder that you can connect with. And in some cases, for example, I decided to do consulting before accepting a full-time role. And it's been...
To give yourself more of a chance to see what it's like.
Exactly. Yes. And it's been amazing because actually it's also good for the founder to have a chance to work with you. I did it, for example, with Appear Here. So with the founder of Appear Here, they were incredibly kind to offer me the role. And it's like, why don't we start maybe with a 2-week like consulting period? Because I think it's going to be the best for both of us. Like you can see actually, am I the right CMO for this business?
Yeah.
And then I can see, is this the right business for me and what I'm looking for? And definitely after those 2 weeks, I was like, this is great. Let's do it. And then that's why I accepted the role. But then you go knowing what's that going to be like. With other consulting periods, I was like, thank you so much. This is the end.
Oh, really?
Yes. I think like this is not for me.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't mean it's a bad business. It's just like it's not the right match. Because I think every business has the reason for being, but you need to bring the best you can to that business. And sometimes it's just not going to be the right match. And I saw that with certain consulting periods. I was like, this is great. It's a good business. It's just not for me.
That is a brilliant approach if you have the luxury that you can do that. So one, you need to be in a position where you're available and you can offer consulting, which is possible at a leadership level, but not for everyone.
Yes.
And lots of businesses might say, like, no, I'm not going to accept that. Like, I need you in or out. When you talk about due diligence, what does that actually mean? I think there'll be people listening here thinking, I'm a senior marketing manager, I'm looking for a new job. I agree that I'm meant to do my due diligence, but like, what is that?
Yes.
Do you have some steps?
Yes, I feel like, consulting, as I mentioned, is probably the best.
Yeah,
because
that's like the holy grail.
It does the holy grail. And I would say most businesses will actually appreciate it. And it's very rare that, a founder will tell you like, no, it's in and out. It's actually, it's great for me as well, because it means basically lowering the risk. Because everyone, when they offer a job, and I know it because I'm offering roles all the time.
Yeah, we all know how nervous
Yes,
that is.
I'm like so excited. At the same time, I'm like, what happens if actually what I saw in the interviews is not exactly what I'm going to see like in the day-to-day?
We know that the interview process is pretty flawed.
Exactly.
We do our best to make it as rigorous as possible. And then at the end of the day, we all know those messages you have to write on Slack when you're like, yep, we should hire them. And you're thinking like, my head's on the line.
Yes. And it's a difficult decision. I feel like we all agree. Interviews are just one snippet and there should be like way more time spent. But I agree that, you need to be in a privileged position of, first of all, being able to do it. And then secondly, having enough savings to, so I'm not saying that everyone can do it, but I think if you can, definitely is the best way. If not, I think like what I always do as well from a due diligence perspective is I speak to former employees. Always go to LinkedIn, check who else was in your role before, and just send them a message. And sometimes you're going to hear horror stories that are not necessarily going to make like a definite decision for you, because everyone has different experiences. I joined businesses where people told me it's horrible, like it's not great. And actually I had a different experience in that business. And that's because we're all different and we're all going to experience different things. But I feel like definitely get that input because at least you know what's going to happen when you join. So speaking to former employees, really important. And then make all the tough questions that you need to make during the interview process. When a business is telling you, we want to hear your questions, they don't expect you to act, basically to really ask fake questions. They are expecting you to ask real questions because
that's what they're impressed by.
Yes, they're also, I feel like they're looking for someone who is going to add meaningful value to that business. And I was, for example, like having some interviews for a role that we're hiring last week. And one of the candidates made really, really interesting questions that were like very deep. And I feel like from my side, what I thought is like, wow, she's actually really caring about this role because she really wants to know what is good and what is bad. And that means that, she's actually going to be fully committed to this role. So it's also a really good way of making an impression in an interview. Like just go hard on your questions because that's what the business expects as well.
Great, okay. And when you're hiring, it sounds like you have recruited a lot of marketing people in your career. What do you look for?
I think the basic skill that I look for in anyone is really curiosity. For me, curiosity is more important than any technical skill. Like, it's way more important.
That is the word that comes up every time. It's so powerful. That's all marketers want.
Yes, it's curiosity, because you can learn anything if you have curiosity. But I think curiosity is not something that you have, it's something that you have connected to a role, right? I have met people who are like incredibly curious, for example, about Oddbox, but they might not be curious about another business. So again, one of the candidates I interviewed quite recently, they were incredibly curious about sustainability. So for me, that says this is going to be a great role for you, because you're going to be so interested in learning more about this business. But I think in general, you need to have curiosity to learn about the business, curiosity to learn new skills, curiosity to figure it out when things are not working. So curiosity is really the basics of any marketing role. And then I think in general, marketing is a combination of analytics and creativity.
Yeah.
So it's really those two technical skills that are really important. And I would say it's usually a mix of both. So it depends on the role. Of course, sometimes we tend to place creativity more on the brand side and analytics more on the performance side. But in true reality, I think both roles need lots of analytics and lots of creativity. So I always look for those two skills as well, analytical thinking and creative thinking.
I think both of those words, like analytics and creativity, can also mean quite big things. So you can be very analytical without being the best at a spreadsheet. You can be very creative without being able to draw or without having the big idea. For me, it's about a way of processing information and taking curiosity and turning it into something concise. That's an analytical mindset. And creativity is about an approach to problem solving and a way of turning problems upside down to see different angles.
Yes.
So I like the distinction you're making, that those two skills are really important, but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. Completely. They often get set up as like left brain, right brain.
Yes. And I think like both are actually, I like what you're saying, like both of them are about problem solving.
Yeah.
Because in the end, what you do with analytical skills or what you do with creative skills is solve a problem. You solve a problem in different ways, right? When you apply your creative side, it tends to be something that is perhaps not logical. It's side thinking, but it finds a new solution, an innovative solution to something that it was not necessarily the logical, rational path. Whereas analytical thinking tends to be more, based on these premises, this is the right conclusion. It's logical thinking, right? But in the end, I think problem solving is what really matters. And I think I always tell this to everyone when they complain about, for example, a certain problem that they're facing in their work. I know it's tough, but I always tell them, like, this is exactly what your pay is salary. Because if it was easy, we wouldn't need you. And it's tough to hear that, but like someone needs to tell you at a certain point in your career, you are hired to solve problems that nobody but you can solve. And of course you can get support from someone else, but you need to figure it out.
It's so true. It's like, my worst thing is when 30 days in, I've hired someone, and 30 days in, I have the same conversation with them every time. They're like, it's actually really, like, there's a lot to fix here. Like, it's a real mess. And I'm always like,
Yes.
Obviously. And they're like, no, but it's really bad. And I'm like, yeah, otherwise there's no way I would pay you.
Yes.
If it was okay, I would have made it better myself.
Completely. Or you would use nowadays AI, right? Like if it was something easy.
ChatGPT to fix it. Like, I find it so frustrating. This misunderstanding that your job is to fix things. And if there was nothing to fix, I wouldn't need you.
Yes.
So be really grateful there are things to fix.
Completely, yes. And I know it sounds tough, like for someone maybe in the audience, but like they do need to understand, we all need to understand that You're hired to drive value to a business. And that value will come from fixing problems that are not easy to solve. If they were easy to solve, the business would have found a way that is not opening a new role. It's expensive. It's really expensive. It's time consuming to hire someone.
Yeah.
So you only do it when it's actually something really, really difficult. Whenever someone complains, particularly when it comes to CMO roles, they're like, oh my God, I joined a business that is completely broken. I'm like, what do you expect? Like, do you expect that if like the business was growing and everything was going well, they would hire a CMO? It's an expensive hire. For sure, like my expectation whenever I join a business as a CMO, it's all going to be broken. Like that's why they hire me.
I think more than that, like count your chickens, it's broken.
Yes.
Because if it was good, it's really hard for you to keep that job.
Completely.
Really hard for you to prove
Value.
that you've had, that you've made value, that you've had an impact.
Completely. Because I think as a CMO, your value is really multiplying everyone's value in the team. But if the team was running already quite well, then what value are you going to be adding? Like it's just literally, if everyone is already operating at a pretty good pace, like if the numbers are looking good, everything is looking great, then you're quite an expensive hire for like just literally making that machine work
a little bit better.
Right? It's just like not worth enough. So my expectation, and I think hopefully as well, like anyone who wants to go for a CMO role, I think like you need to love problem solving because you're not going to be hired in a business that is working. You're going to be hired to fix a business that is somehow broken and needs you to solve that problem.
Well, we're doing bad marketing on problem solving. What we should be doing is talking about opportunities.
Yes, but problems are amazing. Like I love thinking through challenges. I love when a metric is in red. Like a metric in red tells me, God, you really need to figure this out. Like there's something that it's just not easy and you need to figure it out. And I think a lot of that comes maybe from our approach to work, which is always about success, right? It has to work. If not, you're a failure. And I think we need to shift that mindset. And it's more like, it's not working. What can I test? What can I learn in order to make it work?
It's like the thrill of an experiment that goes really wrong.
Yes.
I love this one. We've done a few things recently which have been really brave, made some like big, brave internal challenges and like internal decisions. And one of them went beautifully badly. And it's so exciting because what you unpack from that is so much more valuable than all of the other stuff that was pretty good.
Yes. Yes.
And it's been a really nice, like, I feel like I talk about this stuff a lot internally, like the importance of failure. And it's been so nice to say, like now, I've got an example.
Yes.
And it's really helped me see that I actually haven't created, like we haven't failed far enough.
Yes.
Because I haven't yet been able to point to a big fuck up.
Yes. And I feel like the problem with failure is that I feel like everyone says failure is so important.
Yeah, it's so like cool and
it's
like
so cool.
what you're meant to say.
And I think like a few things that maybe we don't say. I don't think failure because of negligence is great. Like I don't want to fail because of negligence.
No.
And I make this clear to my teams and like I make that clear to myself. I want to fail because I came up with a really solid plan. I thought through the hypothesis. So almost like a scientist thing.
Exactly.
I thought the hypothesis, but then as we all know, experimentation means that the reality can be unpredictable. So that's why I want to fail. I want to fail because I had a strong hypothesis. I did my due diligence to really think carefully what I should do. And then I learned from that experience that there is a different path. But also, what I find frustrating is like failing and not having clear key takeaways or learnings for next time.
Yeah.
So just saying I failed, if you fail because of negligence or if you fail and don't have clear takeaways, that's not great. And I feel like we need to talk about that. Because
that's a really good point.
Yeah, we shouldn't celebrate failure because of the sake of failure. As much as we shouldn't celebrate success just for success in itself. Like if you succeeded, but actually it was pure chance and you didn't do anything.
And you can't point to what's repeatable.
Exactly. That's actually, also not good. So it's more around what you can learn. and how far you have been to really try to drive that result, what I care about as a leader.
But that's where the analytical bit is important. Because an analytical brain can explain what drove that failure and what the learnings and the impact of that is. An unanalytical brain can't communicate a situation into an outcome.
Completely. And also I think an analytical brain can break down problems into smaller steps to try to fix it. But a creative brain is equally important, because if you're just purely analytical, sometimes you're going to try just a small incremental steps, where someone with more of a creative mindset might be, why don't we do something completely different and see what happens? And those moments tend to be either it goes completely bad or it goes completely incredible, but they tend to be really important as well for a business.
Yeah. I feel like we could talk about this forever. Okay, final question. Which other CMO or chief growth officer, or I don't care what their job title is, like who else do you think I should hear from?
So it's fascinating. I saw this question in your document and I had been thinking about it for the last 7 days. Who inspires me? And I don't want to sound disrespectful to the CMO community, which I love. I love my fellow CMO friends, but I usually don't find inspiration from marketing leaders. I find inspiration from writers mostly and screenwriters. I love writing on the side. I think a lot around marketing is really about using language in an inspiring way to influence someone to do something. And the people who really nail that are usually fiction writers. I have particularly 2 writers that I find incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
You cannot invite them because they're not alive anymore.
Damn.
But we can take
what a dinner
learnings.
party that would be.
Yes. One is actually a book that you have right in front of me, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I love his writing. He's a Colombian writer. I read his novel the first time when I was 12 or 13 years old. My mom, I remember, she told me I was bored, as like any child, basically 12, 13 years old. I was completely bored. And she was, read this book. And it was 100 Years of Solitude, which is a very dense book. And I didn't understand anything that was going on in that book. But I remember as a child, it was like, wow, this is just fascinating. Like the use of language. I read it in Spanish, which is my native language. Yeah. And it was like, wow, like the way that, he puts together words, it's just so different to the way I speak and like my friends talk. It really allowed me to see a different world. And since then, I have always been inspired by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I read 100 Years of Solitude probably 5 or 6 times. The second time I understood a bit more. And then the most recent time, I fully understood it finally as an adult. But I was like, great, I understand now all these different characters. It's like so many as well. And then I watched the Netflix series quite recently, which is beautiful and I highly recommend it. And what I learned from Garcia Marquez is how to bring senses, like human senses, to writing, which I think is something that I always try to apply as well in marketing copywriting, because it's so important to be sensorial in your language. And when I say language, of course, it's not just the written language. I think as marketeers, we're communicating all the time through photography, through video, but usually the written word has a really important effect when it comes to influencing someone. So I learned a lot of skills from Garcia Marquez. The second writer is an Argentinian writer, he's called Cortázar. Everyone knows Borges, usually from Argentinian literature. I love him as well as a writer, but I think Cortázar, he is just incredible as a writer. He has this beautiful novel that is called Hopscotch.
Okay.
And it's called The Anti-Novel. And it's a novel that basically is not read chapter by chapter, but you can jump from one chapter to another. And it's set in between Buenos Aires and Paris. And it just really helped me understand how you can actually challenge the norms of a genre like the novel or a category, particularly when you work as a marketeer in a brand. You always need to think about how you can actually subvert people's expectations, go against people's expectations.
That creativity.
And that's what creativity is about. And I feel like Cortázar does it incredibly well in that novel, and also in all his short stories. So So yeah, it's not a CMO.
No, but that's
it's
such a good answer.
Two fiction writers that really inspire me all the time to.
So I'm going to change that question, because I think that is such a better answer than, what this person's performance marketing's doing is kind of interesting. That's fascinating. The other thing that I found really powerful in what you're saying is it's made me realise how important those moments are with kids when you tell them what to do when they're bored.
Yes.
So I remember so vividly having the saying, Dad, I'm bored. And my dad put his straw hat on a bottle of water and said, draw it, I'll be back in an hour. And I was probably the same age you were when you were given 100 Years of Solitude. And that started my love affair with drawing. And I nearly went to art school, and the way I visually interpret the world is such a part of my identity now. And until you told that story, I'd never thought that it started with that moment.
Yes. And I think it's also something that I know I'm grateful for. I think in general, my parents and my mom, she never underestimated me. It was almost like, you're a kid, but I'm going to give you the most difficult novel probably of the 20th century. And you're not going to figure it out, but it's going to be challenging. And I feel like that's something that also we should try to embrace as a skill, all of us. Challenging doesn't mean that it's bad. Challenging means that you're learning, you're growing. And it's never going to be easy at the beginning. I started a master's in computer science a few years ago, and I had no clue what was going on there. I come from a social science background. I studied communication as an undergrad, which is a quite popular degree for entering a marketing career outside of the UK. And I think the UK is not that popular, but in the US.
But the UK is so weird with education. We don't do anything helpful.
It's not usually communication like a degree. I think it's more I know people study English Lit, for example. And
that's what I did, yeah.
Yes, which is a beautiful degree as well. But yeah, I come from a non-computer science, not technical background. And then I told myself, I can do this. I can actually learn how to code, although it's not my background. And it was incredibly challenging. I remember the first classes I took, I was like, what the hell is going on? I don't understand anything. But that challenge actually really kept me growing. And now I look back at some of those initial classes and I'm like, oh my God, it was so easy. It was just so easy. And it's so amazing how your brain can learn something new over time.
Do you now have a master's in computer science?
I'm about to complete it. So
wow.
Yeah, it's been so challenging. I don't want to underestimate the challenge. Every single weekend that I had to do a coding assignment, I was, what the hell am I doing here? I don't understand what's going on. But that challenge helped me grow more than anything else. And this last semester, I took a class on AI ethics for my master's. And it was the first time that I had something that was more related to social sciences in the master's. And I felt like, God, finally. I can it was all my classmates were mostly engineers. And they were like, what is Plato? And I was like, great, this is easy for me. Yes, I got this one. But then at the same time, it's amazing to see how I'm not terrified by really technical programming courses anymore. And that's why I feel if anything, challenging should be a great word. I think challenging, problem solving. If we experiment challenges, not as something that is going to tell us whether we are failure or successful, more as something that allow us to grow, I think we could probably expand way more our horizons, all of us.
What a beautiful note to wrap things up on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was so good.
Yeah, thank you.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable.
Thank you so much for listening. Can you do me one favour right now and subscribe? If you're listening to this in your car, if you're listening to this while you're walking around the park, take that moment to make that one action, because it makes a huge difference to the calibre of the guests that I can invite on the show. Gaston encouraged us to invite some phenomenal dead fiction writers, so I can't make any promises there. But people like him replied to my DMs and agreed to come around and hang out with me, only because of the number of followers and the number of fantastic people who listen to this. So it really does help.